So, a little after 11 a.m. this morning, the Reform UK leader Nigel Farage took to the podium at Westminster and laid out why reform means reform. We are the key difference. We are what Labour voters would have once wanted. We are perhaps what Tory voters would have once wanted. He says he will fund universal winter fuel payments, scrap the two-child benefit cap, position himself into a place that, well, frankly, few other parties have been able to retain. He's made a pledge to those voters. It's a £5 billion pitch, particularly to Labour voters. He says he will reinstate that allowance, scrap the two-child benefit cap, and also put an emphasis on benefits for being married. I mean, that used to be Tory territory, right? Benefits in general, typically Labour territory. On marriage, that issue, the allowance could see one spouse made exempt from paying tax on the first £25,000. And remember, Reform have already promised to lift the starting threshold for paying income tax to £20,000. As for winter fuel payments, we know that more than 10 million pensioners lost out. That was worth £300 a year when the pension top-up became restricted to only people receiving pension credits at the tail end of last year. Although Sir Keir Starmer has since, recently as last week, announced that the cuts could be U-turned following an enormous amount of pressure. The issue around all of this for Nigel Farage and Reform, of course, is that it will cost an arm and a leg. Now, he says he'll pay for it by getting rid of net zero. That's a great headline. What does that mean in reality? What would you actually be getting rid of? Now, you could say, well, we'll cancel contracts or we'll cancel big wind farms. I'm sure there's probably a cost implication if you want to do that. That's not going to come cheap. So there's a lot of money, there's billions of pounds being swirled around in this conversation. On the face of it, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would look at that and say, well, what's not to like? I'm a little unsure why Reform have gone down the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap. I mean, that wouldn't seem ordinarily the kind of thing that Reform would support, unless this is all about trying to get more people to have kids, because we've got a shortage of kids. Yes, we haven't got enough of them. Well, we got loads, it looks like we've got loads of kids around, but actually they're going to become adults and there won't be enough of them to keep the cogwheels of the economy turning. That's loosely it. So the question is this, and we've seen a little bit of this in the United States. You know, Donald Trump had a lot of promises when he came into power. Some of that stuff was enacted very quickly. A lot of it too quickly, and a few errors were there. I'm not blaming them specifically for one or two mishaps in the road. But when you discover you fired so many people in certain parts of the government, you've actually got no one to flipping run the department. And you go, oh, we better rehire. Is Jan still around? Well, the one you just fired and gave her $135,000. Yeah, Jan's still around. She's going to come back. Quid's in, ka-ching for Jan. Immigration, it's a mixed picture on what Trump did there. And a lot of this stuff is now... and, of course, the tariff debacle, depending on where you sit on that. There's many Trump supporters going, hang on a second, it wasn't quite meant to be like this. And what's happened to that policy or this policy? So the broadest question here is, do you trust Reform to keep their promises? If Reform were to get into Downing Street tomorrow, how soon could they reinstate all of these things? How soon could they say, yeah, we're going to... two-child benefit cap, that's going to go. You have 3 kids, don't worry, we'll pay for you. £300 for the pensioners. Marital teasers as well within there too. So, and of course, the income tax threshold for paying income tax at all rising to £20,000. Everybody would support that. Of course you'd support that. Why would you not support that? That's not the question. The question is, could it realistically happen? Now, we're 4 years away from another election, potentially, so a lot can happen between then and now. So I'm going to ask you as a Reform supporter, or as somebody who's flirting with the idea. Remember, this was Mr Farage's pitch to Labour supporters. There's a lot in there that, I mean, the Tories have almost been forgotten now in these discussions. This should be an area that Kemi Badenoch is up there talking about. But it was Reform and Farage that seized the opportunity, took what they would call the middle ground, designed a couple of announcements aimed very specifically at people that would have been Labour voters going, hang on a second, so this Farage party, these reform guys, I thought they were all about immigration, but now they're saying the winter fuel allowance is coming back and the two-child benefit thing is going to be scrapped, and there's a sort of marital sweeteners in there as well, and tax, you don't pay for tax for... Wow! Doesn't sound like a right-wing party. That sounds like my party will think the Labour supporters. That's the theory behind it. But do you trust them? Do you trust Reform UK to keep their promises? Because there's a lot of promises, and you know what? They're going to grow over the course of the coming years.